Alright everybody, it's tier list time. You know what that means. That means I come in and I give you my 4 billion IQ reasons why this tier list is correct, and you tell me why I'm wrong. So, as we got here, we got a BT7 tier list. I am just going to be going in order that it's in right here. We got about like 22 decks to go through here. I'm not sure if this tier list encompasses all the deck lists. There might be some tier 4 decks that aren't on here, and I apologize. I did just go onto tier list maker and chose the one that looked the most complete to me, so this is the one that we're going with. Alright, so getting on into it first, we have Quagmon. As of the day that we are doing this, I actually uploaded a video of me playing Quagmon. I took Quagmon to the last 2 locals that I went to, and I'm going to be completely honest, it's pretty bad. It feels fairly bad. It's one of those decks where it's like, if you get the Greymon out and then you like get the Lightning Joust and stuff, you're good. But if you don't, you can fall behind super hard. Once you start to get stunned, it hurts really hard to beat like blue hybrid. So I wouldn't say it's trash tier and it's not meme tier, but it's probably towards the bottom of B tier because it's viable, but it's not. I don't think it's going to be winning any tournaments anytime soon, but it is very cool and I do like it. Alright, next we have BeelStar aggro. I don't really know what this is supposed to mean, but I'm just going to put this as like 3 Musketeer type stuff with Jesmonds and Ginkaku promotes. I've played versus this like once or twice, so I've seen it, but I'm not super impressed by it. I'm going to put it above Quagmon because I think it has more viability. The option cards are pretty decent. When you're playing Jesmonds and Ginkaku promote, you're feeling pretty good. You're playing purple, so you have access to like Gazimon as well. So you have good cards, but I don't know if I would say it's anything crazy here. All right, then we got green Casino, and I'm just gonna put it in meme tier because I think that it's high rolly and it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of inconsistent because it's called Casino for a reason. You're kind of rolling the dice there. I don't think the cards that you're playing are individually super crazy strong. I don't think it's a trash deck. I think it's kind of a meme. I think if you're playing it, you're just trying to have some fun, and that's what we're doing. So I think it's a solid meme tier. It's definitely not trash, but I don't think it's viable in sort of like a tournament way. So it can't really go into these viable categories here. Next up, we have Truebimon, and Truebimon's interesting because Truebimon is both an S tier deck and an A tier deck. I don't really know where I want to put it yet. I'm trying to look here because the thing is with the S tier in my previous tier list, I usually save that for like the top 3 decks, and I don't know if I have Trueby in the top 3 decks. I think it's in the top 5 decks, but I don't know if it's in the top 3. So as of right now, I'm going to put it at the top of A tier, and we might move that as we get down later. But I'll have to think it out, talk it out, and see how I feel about it when we get there. But I know what the top 3 I want to put as the top 3 decks, and Trueby is not on there. But definitely top 5. Now we got D-Brigade. D-Brigade is one of my favorite archetypes. I always love D-Brigade. If you watch my content, you know we're all about D-Brigade here. However, this is probably one of the weakest that D-Brigade has ever felt. It feels like it doesn't have much viability versus blue hybrid, and the purple decks are kind of go faster than it. Cherubi would kind of destroy it because you could just Digivolve into Cherubi. So I'm going to put it in fringe viable. It's definitely a viable deck. I just think that right now, out of all the metagames I've played D-Brigade, this is the one that it feels the weakest, and it also feels like it has the least amount of avenues you can take, as where in previous formats D-Brigade, you can make all kinds of different D-Brigades. In this format, it feels like if you're not playing security-style D-Brigade, then you don't really have a choice, or have like a way to win, because you kind of just need to be able to swarm as fast as possible. You can play the yellow-based D-Brigade, but then that also loses pretty hard to blue hybrid, as to where the security style one at least has outs and ways to be able to win. It has the speed through the security and through the rookies to be able to get there. But yeah, D-Brigade is unfortunately not feeling too great right now. Diaboromon. So the thing about Diaboromon is I kind of want to put it in Fringe Viable, but every single time I've seen Diaboromon be played this format, it's lost. I've never seen it win a game from the games that I've played, and I haven't really seen like anybody playing it. As to where like with Agumon, BeelStar, and D-Brigade, I've seen people play it. I've seen it potentially win. I haven't seen Diaboromon do anything this format, and I think it's going to have a pretty decent time, or a pretty hard time in this format, especially with the blue hybrid, and I don't think it's going to be able to beat the speed of like purple decks, really like any purple deck. So as of right now, I kind of want to put it in trash tier, although I don't really think it's trash tier, but I don't think it's a meme. Diaboromon's a real deck, but I don't really think it's that viable right now. That's something I could be proven completely wrong. The last tier list that I made for EX1, I put Diaboromon pretty low, and then it came out and had like a great showing at Nationals. So Diaboromon is a deck that has multiple times proven me wrong. As of right now, I just haven't seen anybody play it. I can't rank it high because I haven't seen anybody play it, so I don't really have anything to base it off of other than the people who were diehard Diaboromon players have dropped Diaboromon, and when diehard players drop their main deck, it's usually not too good look for the deck. Alright, Gabumon. So Gabumon is definitely between A tier and B tier. Gabumon did top a Digifest. It did have representation at Worlds, but it does have a little bit of a downside this format, as to where with other blue decks you get way more room to play things like Tommy or Koji, Korikaku, Beowulf. You get to play like 4 of Floodgates, you get to play Bokomons and stuff like that. As to where Gabumon, you don't have as much room. From what I've seen, you don't have a lot of room to, you can only play like 2 of the Floodgates each instead of 4. You can play usually like maybe 1 or 2 Bokomon, but probably no Bokomon. There's also not as much room for Beowulfmon. And when you're playing Gabumon, you kind of need to capitalize on EX1 Gabu, which means you need to play things like Octomon, so that way you have stronger champions to put on top of it. So you have a lot less room to play these really broken cards that are in the blue hybrid compared to the regular blue hybrid. So Gabumon is one of those things where Gabumon has a very strong effect. Gabumon itself is very consistent. It has a lot of ways to be able to cycle. You have the mats, which are very strong. All the Gabumons have very strong effects as well. So it's good, but it just isn't as good as like regular blue hybrid in my opinion. So I think I would put this at the bottom of A tier, maybe the top of B tier, because it is viable. It is a deck that can do very well, but it is kind of outclassed by most of the like blue decks, and yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna put it at the bottom of A tier right now, but this could change going forward. Alright, we got Grand Quagmon OTK. So this is on the tier list, but I haven't seen anybody play this format. I haven't even seen anybody talk about playing Green Quagmon OTK. So I'll put it in meme tier, I guess. I don't really know if it's actually a meme, but I haven't seen anybody play it, and I don't really feel like it's that strong of a deck right now. The other build up decks and swing a lot decks are a lot more powerful. Jesmond has the ability to drop the Sistermon, so not only do you get a bunch of checks, but you get to go wide. Diaboromon gets to be able to like build up big stacks, swing for multiple, gain memory, draw cards, pop 2 Digimon, and though that feels a lot better. As to where Grand Quagmon OTK, it's kind of like you swing all your checks and then you kind of leave everything off the board, and if your opponent has an answer for it, then you're kind of out of luck. Especially because you have to Digiburst away your sources, which means that you're even more open to getting stunned, as to where with the other big stack decks, when you're playing blue, you have to stun, or you have to strip their sources, you have to hit Tommy, stuff like that to be able to stun them. As to where with Grand Quagmon OTK, they're just doing it for you, and they're only getting like 3 checks, and then they have to go into the Chaosmon. So I think it's, out of all the big stack decks, it's got to be the weakest. And it's also just one that I haven't seen anybody really play. But I've always been on the train that if we had more than 1 HPD, this would be a meta deck forever. So I kind of like the deck. I don't think it's really trash, but I don't see really anybody playing it. I think when you're playing Grand Quagmon OTK, you're just trying to OTK with green, and that's kind of the whole base there. All right, we got yellow hybrid. This is gonna just account for, I'm gonna account for the purple base because I think it's better than the yellow base. It's gotta go either the bottom of S tier or the top of A tier. It's just a very strong deck. It does have downsides of being a little slow. It can tie in like tournament matches. It has a tendency to tie, especially if you're playing mirror matches. But other than that, you have very strong cards. The purple package is very strong. You have Jet Sylphie. You have access to fantastic tamers. And yellow has some of the best level 6s in the game. So you have access to things like MachineDramon, Dynasmon, Kazuchimon. If you want to play Lord Knightmon, you have access to all these level 6s. And so yellow is one of those colors where whenever yellow has even like relatively strong cards in the metagame, it's always going to be top tier. We've seen this with MachineDramon, WarGreymon, Lord Knightmon, and now we have the hybrids, we have Jet Sylphie, we have something that's going to be able to take advantage of all the fantastic yellow tamers that we have, and so yellow hybrids is going to be very strong. I think the only reason that it goes down in power level compared to some of the other decks is it is kind of like security control, which means that it does have a slow game plan, which means that you can tie a lot, which kind of pushed me away from the deck a little bit because in a tournament, in a lot of these tournaments where you have to be X and O to be able to win, getting a tie is relatively the same as getting, well, it's the same thing as getting a loss. If you're trying to win the tournament, obviously you'll get better pricing or whatever, but if you're trying to win a tie, in these type of tournaments, the same thing as a loss, and so I was always on the train that I'd rather take a loss fair and square than lose or tie off of timer, and so that is the downside to it, but it is still just such a strong deck that has just very singular powerful cards that you definitely just have to you always have to prepare for this deck. This is one of those decks where when you're building a deck, you have to be prepared to play for yellow hybrid or it's going to steamroll you or you're going to be too slow to be able to beat it. Blue hybrid is the best deck in the format. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion, if you play, like, I think the Azulong package is way stronger than the Magna package. I think Magna is a little slow. I also think Magna in the current format is also just a bit weaker. I think Koji is kind of just a bad tamer in general. So whatever you're playing, blue hybrid is going to be the top. Tommy is just a very powerful card. Korikaku is a very powerful card. You're able to pair that up with Beowulfmon. Blue is the only color with both the floodgates. So you're going to be able to play Syakomon and Madoki Betamon while also being able to play things like Bokomon. You have Strabimon to search, and Strabimon's just one of the most powerful searchers in the game. You have some of the most powerful tamers with Davis. You have Sorjo, Tommy, you can play starter deck Matt, you can play Koji. These are all very powerful tamers, so you get access to just super powerful cards. This deck in this metagame, honestly, from what we've seen from the Digifest, it was pushing tier 0. It's like tier 0.5 right now, probably. So I think it's just uncontested. Gotta be the best deck right now. It's just way too strong, and yeah. Red hybrids, so this can be built two different ways. It can be built with the Ancient package, Ancient Greymon, or you can just go full the Aldemon package and just swing. I think no matter what, it's fine. It's definitely a A-tier deck, in my opinion. If I could put it between these two, there we go. I think it's definitely an A-tier deck. Honestly, as a blue hybrid player, this is the deck that I am the most afraid of playing. It feels like the only matchup where I don't have like anything in my control, or it's just kind of like they're going to build a big stack and swing like 4 or 5 checks in one turn, and I either hit like really nuts security and then get into a point where I can stun them out and then be able to get the aggression to go for game, or I don't. So it's one of those decks where it feels really good. The only downside of it is it does have the problem that a lot of big stack red decks have, and that is that it's kind of inconsistent, and especially versus blue hybrid and yellow hybrid, I think they both can kind of outpace it if once you get that first initial swing, if you're not able to kind of capitalize on that and your opponent's able to come back, you can fall very far behind. And I've also just seen a lot of times playing red hybrids where they just don't have the stack that they need to be able to build up and get those big swings, so they'll maybe just go for 2 or 3 checks, and going for 2 or 3 checks is a lot different than swinging like 4 or 5 checks with the Ancient, with things like the Atomic Inferno and stuff like that. So although it's a very strong deck, I think it would be towards the top of A, but I have to put it below Truby because it's just not as consistent although it is very, very powerful. So now we got 2 green hybrids down here. One has a red background and one has a green background. So the one with the red background we're going to classify as the red-green hybrid, also known as Christmas. That went very popular. And I gotta put this right above the red hybrid here. Another deck that has very high potential to go aggressive. I think you could put this either way here, but we did see a lot of red-green hybrid at the beginning of the format. It swarmed the metagame like super hard. It was one of the most represented decks for a good like week or two. Then it started to die down. I think that's mainly because people realized that it can be highly inconsistent. It's going to be like red hybrid, where when you get the stack that you need, when you're able to get up to Rhino, go into Ancient Beetlemon, you're going to be able to trash, get security check, piercing, you can put Atomic Inferno on it, and then it's going to be very hard to get rid of, and then when you do get rid of it, you get to play a green hybrid from your hand. So it is fairly good. But my biggest problem is that it's super inconsistent, and although I was playing this deck a lot, in any deck where or any tournament where we weren't playing the Mulligan format, this wasn't even on my like radar of playing, because it can just be inconsistent, because you can just open a really bad hand. If you miss JP early, you're really going to fall far behind, because a lot of the deck revolves around having JP piercing and swinging over your opponent's Digimon. So as much as like Mimi and Ken and stuff like that are good, JP is very, very key. So if you miss that early, it is a bit inconsistent, but I do think that it has a little bit more versatility to it than the red hybrid, because the red hybrid is just kind of, you got to build up and then you got to just go, as to where with the red-green hybrid, you have suspending effects, so you can play a little bit more defensive, as well as you have a little bit better tamers than the red hybrid's going to have, because JP is just really, really good, as well as Ken and Mimi are also very powerful. So I think it gives it they probably have the same amount of consistency in my opinion, but it's just a little bit stronger. Full green hybrid. So I actually think that full green hybrid is way worse than red-green hybrid from my testing. The red-green hybrid gave you so much to the deck. Being able to have Gaussmon is very big. Obviously with the green hybrid, you get to play the Terriermon, which is going to be good versus blue hybrid, but I think the Terriermon is really the only upside to the green hybrid. I think with the red hybrid, the Gaussmon and the Guilmons add a lot to the deck, as well as being able to play the Atomic Inferno, and if you want to get really crazy with it, you can main deck the Atomic Blaster, which I've seen many people do. So the green hybrid, just the full green hybrid, is going to be more consistent, but not as powerful in my opinion, because you're not playing the more aggressive cards that the red gives you, as well as the Gaussmon. I think outside of the blue hybrid, the Digivolution blocker is going to be more powerful than the memory blocker in the other matchups. I have to put them close. I kind of just want to put it right here. I want to put it right here because I think it's slightly weaker. It's a hair weaker in my opinion. I just think Gaussmon, Atomic Inferno, and the promo Guilmon gave so much to the deck, so much aggression to the deck, in a deck that already has a lot of top-end aggression. It gave lower-end aggression, and also, like I said, I really like the Gaussmons a little bit more than I like the Terriermons, but I think these are relatively close. You could switch the red hybrid and the green hybrid here, but yes, this is my opinion, so I gotta go with the red-green hybrid over the green hybrid. That's just from my testing. I thought the green hybrid was just not as powerful as the red-green hybrid. Alright, Jesmond. I think Jesmond just goes here. Jesmond's just that deck. So Jesmond, as long as we have the Savior Huckmon at 4, Jesmond's gonna be pretty much the same, right? So like in the last tier list we did, I had Jesmond at the top. That's because security control was very prevalent, and so Jesmond had a lot of matchups that it could just farm. I feel like it did really well versus the 3 Musketeers as well, so there was just a lot of matchups where Jesmond almost had like a very, very, very big advantage in those matchups. This format, I don't know as much. There's a lot of aggressive things in the metagame. Blue hybrid can get very aggressive. Truebimon can get very aggressive. The red-green hybrid, the red hybrid, the green hybrid, all these decks can get very aggressive, and so as Jesmond is Jesmond, it is a deck that has a potential to brick. It has a potential to just go a little too slow, especially if you don't get your ties out. Your opponent can keep putting you at 1. So I think it's definitely in the A tier. It's There's no questioning about that. Where it goes in the A tier, I think I have to put it above the red-green hybrid and the red hybrid, because I feel like the red hybrid and the Jesmond are very similar in how they want to play, except the Jesmond's going to have a little bit more consistency to it, especially now that we got the new Quagmon. We have new Sistermons. The new Sistermons can allow you to recover as well, so we got access to recovery, blocker, memory gain, so you can swing multiple checks while also going wide on the board. But it is one of those decks where it can get out aggressed fairly easily in some of these decks, especially when you consider the fact that it can brick sometimes, because you kind of, for it to have the maximum potential, you kind of need it to hit that perfect stack. So if you don't hit that, it is a little bit slower, but I do think that I would have to put it above red hybrid for sure. So it's mostly, do I put it here or do I put it here? But I think that it's not going to be much of a controversial statement to say that Jesmond is better than green hybrids, but I don't think it's better than the Truebimon. I think this is up for debate whether Truebimon or Jesmond are better, but as far as consistency goes, as well as versatility, Trueby's just got it more because it can go multiple different ways. It also has great tamers that disrupt your opponent's turn, like Mimi and Kari, so it does have a little bit, so I have to put it below the Trueby. Lilith Loop. Lilith Loop is going in S tier. I gotta put it in S tier. The thing about purple decks right now is that the Eismon Scatter Mode and regular Eismon package is super consistent. You can draw so many cards, you can discard so many cards, you can put the Kinkaku promotes on top of it, so you can just like drop Eismons, you can swing. They're playing Mastamon with it too, so you can get in a position to where you can get the Cerberusmon out. You can swing if it survives, you can pop with the werewolf mode. You can go ahead and then win rate into Mastamon, trash their top security, bring back promote, swing. It's just very viable. I think it's definitely within the top 3 decks. It's just purple and blue are so strong right now, and they're very consistent at what they do. And in this current metagame, consistency, being highly consistent is something that's going to push you above a lot of the other decks, because we just have a lot of decks that can be a little inconsistent. If we look at red-green hybrid, red hybrid, green hybrid Gabubon, they can be a little inconsistent. All these things down here can hit inconsistencies. It's really like these top few spots that are the consistency decks, and that's going to be highly rewarded here, especially when we just look at blue and purple as colors and their card pool. Right now, blue and purple are just going to be having probably the strongest 2 card pools for the colors. And Lilith Loop is just one of those decks where if you are very good at this game and you're very good with Lilith Loop, it's a deck that highly rewards you for being knowledgeable and being able to manage your resources. So not only do you have these crazy new package with the Eismons that is just going to give you way higher aggression than Loop previously had, but you can also just pair that with the general Loop package. Yes, we did lose MDF, which is kind of a problem, but we still have win rate. You can still get this going, and you still have a lot that you can do with these Wart Defeat. You can bring back Cerberusmons and stuff like that, so that way you can get some more draw discard going, or you can bring back the promotes. A lot of them aren't playing the Kinkaku Ginkaku package anymore, so you're not going to be able to get that gain 1, draw 1 package anymore, which isn't that big of a deal because you can just Digivolve on top of the Eismons that you just played, give it rush, and swing in, so it's super powerful. Alright, Lord Knightmon. So Lord Knightmon's a very interesting one for me because this is a deck that I have in the background I've been working on, and it's just really hard because it's hard for me right now to build yellow decks. I've been working on Lord Knightmon and the War Greymon deck. They just don't feel as good right now. It's one of those stack decks that doesn't really go for big swing turns. It's mostly just you build a big stack and then you can start to go wide with Lord Knightmon, which is way worse into blue hybrid. The other stack decks that are going in and swinging for like 3-4 checks, they're not as weak to stun because then you get them down to the point where next turn you can promote, swing, and then go the hybrid on top and have game. As for with Lord Knightmon, yeah, you can swing and drop Bushiagumon, but there's a lot of things that can go bad. It's a lot easier for you to stun. I also think it's just relatively slow compared to a lot of these decks up here. Like, I think these top 5, 6, 7 decks are going to have a good advantage versus Lord Knightmon just due to the fact that it is relatively slow. Lord Knightmon didn't get really any cards in BT7 that I feel like were really big pushing Lord Knightmon to be way better than it was. Lord Knightmon's always going to be a very strong card. Being able to swing and drop a level 5 or be able to drop something like Bushi and Lucamon is always going to be a strong effect. However, with the current metagame, how it's revolved kind of around the blue hybrid as well as the purple kind of turbo, and then having various aggro decks, I think it's going to be hurting a little bit. So I think Lord Knightmon I'm going to go ahead and put at the top of B tier. I don't think I would put it at A tier, especially in my testing. I think it's viable to a degree, but I don't know. Unless your name is like Brian Do Work, you're probably not doing anything too crazy with Lord Knightmon, but you definitely can get some results. I just don't think we're going to be seeing like more than one Lord Knightmon per cut at a tournament if we see a Lord Knightmon, so I gotta put it at the top of B. I think it's a little bit stronger than the other decks in B, especially as they're definitely more consistent than the other decks in B tier, but I'll put it at the top of B for now. MachineDramon I gotta put in trash tier. I hate to say it. I'm sorry, Ramiro. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. However, it's too slow. You're gonna have to Digivolve past turn, or you're going to have to hard play it past turn, then gain the memory. If you gain the memory, we're in a metagame where most decks are playing memory blockers, so you're getting even more hurt by memory blockers this format than I think we did last format, because there's just more decks that can fit memory blockers in, especially since there's more different types of blue decks opposed to just Bond of Friendship, and there's also different types of purple decks, so you're going to be having Madoki, and you're going to be having Gazimon that you have to deal with, so that's a big problem. But the biggest problem with it is that to get it out, unless you're digivolving on top, which most of the time you're not, you're doing the on play. You're going to on play, you're going to pass turn, and then they just hit you with like Tommy, Digivolve, Kumamon, strip the last source, then you're stunned, or you can go with Howling. It's just one of those things where since we have to pair a lot of things against Blue Hybrid, we have to guess how is this deck going to do versus Blue Hybrid on average. It's going to do fairly poorly, and I also just don't see it doing super well versus a lot of the other decks up here. I would put it in fringe viable if it was just Blue Hybrid that I was worried about, but I think it's going to have a hard time versus a lot of these other decks. We are in a fairly aggressive metagame here. As we can see, Lilith Loop and the purple decks are going to be fairly aggressive. Yellow Hybrid can get aggressive once you get up into your megas. Obviously, you can't DP reduce the MachineDramon, which is an upside to it, but there is that. The Truebimons can go very wide, and so if you're not playing wide board removal like Ultimate Flare or Schwartz, then you're not going to be able to really clear them, and those two cards are a little bit weaker this format. Jesmond, it definitely can beat, but I still think Jesmond is going to be on average favored, as well as all these other hybrid decks. Gabu Bond, probably not so much, but I think all these decks and above are probably going to be having a fairly highly advantaged matchup towards MachineDramon. And then also just when I see a deck that is based around having inheritables, and we are an inheritable strip metagame, it's hard for me to put this at viable. However, we do have Ramiro, who is playing it at our locals. Haven't seen him recently, so if he can come in and destroy me with MachineDramon, then I have no hesitation to changing this, because I do like MachineDramon as a deck. Just looking at it in the metagame right now, I think it is a little bit worse. However, it is definitely better than Diaboromon. Next up, we got Purple Aggro. I'm going to put it above Lilith. I don't know. These two are interchangeable, so because these two decks are very similar. The difference is that is your top end. So with Lilith Loop, you are playing 2 to 3 Lilith, and you're usually playing a higher count of Jack Raids. As well with the Purple Aggro, you're playing on average more Mastamon, and if you are playing Lilith Loop, it's not as much. And you can get away without playing as many Jack Raids because you have to play more one-cost options such as Calling to the Darkness, Deathclaw, even Demonic Disaster if you want to. So you have to change the decks a little bit, but these two decks essentially are super similar up until some of your level 5s and your level 6s. Other than that, they're like very, very similar. So I think you can interchange these either way. I'm going to give Lilith Loop the upper hand here and say that it is the better deck only because I feel like it has a higher ceiling, so it's going to reward better players more. So I think higher priority Loop package has a higher ceiling than just the Purple Aggro, just swing, drop Eismons, promote on top of them, Mastamon, bring back promote, Cerberus Werewolf. But they're both very, very similar decks. There's very, very small things that change the decks. I just think Loop has a higher ceiling, so I'll just give it there. But spoiler alert, our S tier is done. These are the top 3 decks. I think I'll put Yellow Hybrid here as the 3rd deck, just because these two are so similar to each other that they're almost kind of the same deck. But yeah, Blue Hybrid, Purple aggro type things, and then Yellow Hybrids I think are card for card they're gonna be the strongest decks. But yeah, the purple's just very similar. Rookie Rush is just gonna be the bottom of Fringe Viable. Rookie Rush is a deck where I think, in my opinion, Rookie Rush is always viable. It's always going to be a viable deck. Being able to just play rookies and swing is always going to be a viable thing to do. Just like Security Control is technically a viable thing to do. It's just that Rookie Rush and Security Control right now are terrible. Having a bunch of things that don't have sources and that have low DP and that can get multiple cleared by things like Atomic Inferno, that's really bad right now. But it is viable. If we want to talk about like decks that are good for beginner players, Rookie Rush is like the deck, in my opinion. I think right now D-Brigade is probably a better Rookie Rush style deck because you have a little bit more avenues that you can take. It's not as one-dimensional. It's not just play rookies and then rush. You can Digivolve up. You can play security style. You can play yellow if you want. You have Darkdramon to be able to play through. You have a multitude of better champions that you can play with. So I think D-Brigade's a little bit better of a Rookie Rush deck, but Rookie Rush will just always be viable, if even just the bottom of Fringe viable, because if you are playing a deck that can't handle Rookie Rush, you're going to be in trouble. Like, let's say Jesmond right now, right? Jesmond can still probably beat Rookie Rush a lot of the time, but it will have times where Rookie Rush just outrushes it before they can get to their deck, and so it can get games. But if you play Rookie Rush versus like Blue Hybrid, you're going to have a terrible time. If you play Rookie Rush versus like Yellow Hybrid, awful time. Truby, awful time. Even like Red and Green Hybrid, terrible time. You're going to have Rookie Rush. But if you catch your opponent off guard, it is viable. Now we get into Security Control, and now I said Security Control is Fringe viable, and I think it technically is, but I have to put it in trash tier. I have to. Like, as I was saying that, I was like, I shouldn't have said this, because I know I'm about to put Security Control in trash tier. It is not doing it in hybrid meta right now. Hybrid meta, so the thing about Security Control, right? Let's go back to the last format where Security Control was undisputedly a top 3 deck. So let's go back to that. Its biggest flaw was that it had no counterplay to hybrids. So if you were able to get early checks and then gain enough memory to be able to go for multiple hybrids, you would win. So playing like 3 Lobomon and some Kendos, that was like 6 hybrids, that was usually enough. That was enough for you to be able to have an advantage versus Security Control. So now we have to look at these other decks, which have way more than 6 hybrids. There's a whole bunch of memory control in this format right now with things like Sorajo, TK Kari, Jack Raids, memory boosts, memes, like there's all types of way to gain memory, so you can very easily get 1 or 2 checks in, just build up Tamers, and then go for one big turn where you swing with the things on your board, and then you just go for a bunch of hybrids. Especially with Bokomon being able to give you essentially a hybrid for free, as far as memory-wise. That means you have an even higher chance of being able to go into multiple hybrids. So as much as Security Control is technically a deck that will always be Fringe viable, because you can just recover and have big decks, it's just way weaker than Yellow Hybrid right now, which is essentially Security Control right now, and it's much more potent because not only is it defensive, it's aggressive, and it's versatile, as though Security Control is mostly one-dimensional. It's mostly just you're going to recover, and then you're going to play big option cards and hope big option cards come out of your security. But because there's so many hybrids right now, Security Control has basically fallen off the map, and so it's very hard to play it. I do want to consider it Fringe viable because it's a deck that technically, if your opponent is not ready for it, they will go down. But in this metagame right now, you almost have to build a deck that's good versus Security Control just naturally. Like, you don't even have to consider Security Control even being a thing, and you're going to have a deck that's usually built fine into Security Control. Titamon, so this is a deck that I considered playing. It has the Jesmond package that you can play while also being a mega branch that can, like with that mega, you can swing for a lot of checks. You do kind of have to play things like Black War Growlmon in it to be able to kind of fully utilize it. But if I'm going to be honest, I see Titamon. I see you having to play specific cards in Titamon to fully get Titamon's power being in there means that you're not going to have to play some of the cards that Purple Aggro and Lilith Loop are going to play. It's a little bit slower because your whole deck revolves more so around hitting your mega slot, as where the other purple decks can really just play off their champions, and then once they hit their mega, they just have these really big swing turns, but they don't have to hit their mega. Titamon, I feel like you have to hit your mega, so I would put it next to Lord Knightmon. But because it has the new purple Jesmond stuff, and I've talked about how good it is, I'm going to put it at the top of B tier. I don't think it's A tier. It's definitely not trash, and it's not a meme. It's a deck that definitely can be played. It's just going to be one of those decks where it's a little bit slower, and when we're looking at the other big stack decks, it's just not as strong. Red Hybrid and Jesmond are going to be a lot better. Even Truebimon's going to be better, because not only is Truebimon going to be able to match your equal aggression by being able to play things like Agumon out to be able to get that extra check, but it also has defensive power, being able to Digivolve into Trueby, clear the board, and then you're also just going to be able to have more room to play other stuff. But I think Titamon is a deck that I was very interested in, but it feels very close to Lord Knightmon for me. But it does have the new purple cards, and the new purple cards are pretty good. Alright, we had chat put in their predictions of where X-Antibody's going here. It's all over. What we think of X-Antibody is all over. And I'm just going to go ahead and lay down the law, okay? So X-Antibody is a deck that I've played a bunch against. We have like 3 or 4 people in our locals who play a bunch of X-Antibody, and rather good X-Antibody lists, may I add. And for some reason, it's also very big on the internet, so I've played it in multiple tournaments, True Champ games, Gaia Force, those things. I played a bunch of X-Antibody, so I gotta put it above Red Hybrid. I gotta put it above Red Hybrid. And let me explain why. X-Antibody is a big stack deck. It is a deck where you're just making big stack, and then you're swinging, and you're putting a Diaboromon underneath, and you're going to get big checks. So why is it better than Red Hybrid? And that is because I think that the cards that you have are better. I think that the search that you have makes it more consistent. And I also think that the ability to be able to delete things when you attack forces very awkward interactions with how your opponent has to play. And also you have just a very strong tamer. The Coda being able to be a memory tamer that also searches for your pieces, and then you can put a Grumblemon on top, is super strong. And then also, if we want to consider the inheritables that we have for the deck, the Dorumon being able to like gain a memory, and the Doraemon being able to draw, those are very good. So you're going to be able to essentially swing, put something underneath, gain a memory, draw a card, potentially swing for 3, 4, 5 checks. Plus, you have access to potential good level 7s in either Zwart Defeat or the Chaosmon. And to top it all off, the security in this deck is great. You can hit the option cards, which allow you to like draw cards. You can hit Brave Metal, but the main thing is like even Alphamon. Alphamon being able to come into your hand off of that and stop swings can make it so you can basically promote, swing a bunch of checks, and your opponent has to go wide to swing in, and you hit Alphamon. All your attacks stop, and then next turn you can go in, promote, swing, go with Grumblemon on top, and win the game. So I see X-Antibody and Red Hybrid as far as big stack decks to be very similar, but I think X-Antibody is just definitely edges it out. I think it's a bit stronger, and I think it's also going to be more consistent. So I got to give X-Antibody the edge here over Red Hybrid. But that's it. This is the tier list. This is the BT7 tier list. This is what we got right here. Again, all of this is based off of my experience playing. I have been playing a bunch of BT7, so a lot of this is placement on how I felt either piloting the decks or playing against the decks versus the various different decks here. So let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. I know there's going to be all kinds of different opinions in there, so I'd love to hear it. Let me know why I'm wrong. But with that being said, I'm going to catch you all next time, and I will see you later. Hope you have a fantastic day. Peace out.